Virgo is the sixth sign of the zodiac. It is a feminine, mutable earth sign. You are symbolized by the Virgin, and your ruling planet is Mercury. Of all the signs of the zodiac, yours is perhaps the most underestimated. But when others dismiss you as the sign of the critic or the craftsman, they're making a great mistake. This is certainly not all that you are or can be.
But people do tend to dismiss us just the same, you know.
Yes, I always get the feeling that people think of Virgoans as also Rams, the natural losers of this world.
That's probably because Virgo is also known as the sign of service. And people mistakenly assume that service is all that you're good for, and that you cannot lead or command. Actually, they're taking a very narrow view. Anyone who really understands what leadership and responsibility are about also knows that the people at the top are the real servants, and that no man can control others until he has learnt self-control, and that's something that seems to come naturally to Virgoans.
All the same, it's not very easy for a man to tell people he was born under the sign of the Virgin. It makes one sound a bit soft.
And it's no easier for a woman, I can tell you. People either lose interest or just laugh at you when you say you're a Virgo.
Well, let's examine just what the combination of factors which goes to make up your sign means. Yours is an earth sign, and this should mean that you are practical, reliable, down-to-earth people. The femininity of the sign is just another way of saying that yours is an inward-looking sign rather than an extrovert one. But Virgo is mutable, and mutability gives a tendency or capacity to change. Unlike the other earth signs, Taurus, which is fixed, and Capricorn, which is cardinal, your earth qualities are considerably altered by your mutability. Yours is the only earth sign which has this quality of adaptability. And while you are as reliable as the other two, you are a great deal less materialistic than they are, and less predictable. Being ruled by Mercury, the planet of communication and quick change, you not only react to other people, you need them, and they need you. You must listen to and learn from them, and in turn, you have much that you simply have to pass on to them. Just as the earth signs tend to be the anchormen of the zodiac, the mutable signs are the linkmen. The combination of earth and mutability gives you a dual role. You are dependable, so others rely on you. But being ruled by the messenger of the gods, you are also a communicator, and can therefore be a valuable go-between. If other people turn to you in time of trouble,
Which they do very frequently.
you will offer not only a comfortable shoulder to cry on and a willing ear to listen to their woes, but also practical help, and perhaps the unexpected jolt that they really need. Since self-pity is something you have had to fight from an early age, you are fully aware of just how destructive it can be. You are always sympathetic, but you can also be uncompromisingly firm.
That's true. So, rule one has to be, never expect a Virgoan to tell you just what you want to hear. He'll also tell you a few things about yourself you'd prefer not to know. Everything I've ever read about Virgo always goes on relentlessly about our analytical minds. Now, I know that I've got an eye for detail, but surely that's not a peculiarly Virgoan characteristic.
No, of course it's not. But of all the signs, yours is the one that exploits it in almost every aspect of your life. Some of the other signs obviously have fairly acute powers of observation too. But while they tend to notice things in passing, Virgoans are fully aware of their ability to observe and analyze, and, being eminently sensible and practical, you make full use of this gift. Many of you, quite naturally, gravitate to the sort of work which not only enables you to use it, but which demands that you do. A very high proportion of reporters and journalists are Virgoans, and of course, reporters have to be observant and accurate if they are to inform their readers reliably of what is going on in the world.
Yes, but people seem to think that we get so bogged down in detail that we can't grasp essentials.
While this is true of some Virgoans, it certainly does not apply to all of you. You, of all people, tend to be aware that very often it is only possible to get an overall picture of anything when each separate and relevant fact has been sieved and examined. Some of the people born under other signs can reach their conclusions by wild guesses or flashes of insight. But you get there by a logical analysis of the facts and figures. In the end of the day, your way is the most reliable, and therefore is more often right. You do not take shortcuts, but on the other hand, you do not go shooting off in the wrong direction. You are thorough, and this probably accounts for your reputation for being a craftsman. But any creative artist knows that he must master his craft before he can develop it into an art.
I must say I do get tired of being branded as a critic.
No one could deny that Virgoans possess critical ability, and it is indisputable that a large number of critics are born under your sign. Your eye for detail simply will not allow flaws and mistakes to escape your notice. But you do also possess that rare quality, the ability to see your own flaws and mistakes. Most of you are deeply aware not only of imperfections in the world around you, but also of the imperfections in your own character or personality. But it seems to me that it is only people who have some idea of what perfection is who can know exactly what it isn't. You always know when something is just not good enough, but conversely, you know a masterpiece when you see one. Your skill with words makes your criticism so devastatingly accurate that people with less humility than you think it is cruel.
And so to rule too. Never try to pretend to a Virgoan that you're perfect.
If you want to hang on to your illusions.
When I hear Virgo described as the sign of the critic, I always think it gives the wrong impression. It's really only half a description.
Yes, it doesn't give people any idea of the other things we are and can do at all.
I said that your ruler was the planet Mercury, and in astrology, Mercury is said to rule the mind. An astrologer will always examine the situation of Mercury and the angles made to it by other planets in a birth chart for an indication of an individual's mental capabilities, also of how they are likely to be used. Now obviously, with Mercury as your patron planet, Virgoans will tend to be people with a high regard for intelligence and with a high intelligence themselves. You are in a way the reasoners of the zodiac, for you simply must subject every statement, idea and argument to your intensely logical examination. Half-baked plans or airy-fairy ideas will never escape your scrutiny. It is hardly surprising that Hegel, the great German philosopher, who believed that reason was the ultimate reality, was a Virgoan. What people tend to forget, however, is that you apply the same strictly logical approach and high standards to your own work. Consequently, besides being natural literary critics, many Virgoans are natural writers. I said that Mercury rules the mind, but logical thinking is only one of the functions of the human mind. Imagination is also a mental process. Some of the greats in world literature were in fact born under your sign. Tolstoy, one of the most important novelists the world has known, was born on the 28th of August, 1828. Virgo is often said to lack breadth of vision, but this is a charge that could never be levelled against Tolstoy. Nor could it be made against Goethe, Germany's great playwright, poet and novelist. Incidentally, he is a superb example of the Virgoan unwillingness to accept its own imperfections, for throughout his life he improved and refined works which he had already written and published. Two of our great writers of this century were also born under your sign. D.H. Lawrence and Christopher Isherwood are your fellow Virgoans.
And wasn't H.G. Wells also? You can never say that he was obsessed by detail or simply accumulated facts. He not only had enough breadth of vision to write with astonishing accuracy about the future, but he also wrote the shortest and most readable history of the world that there is.
Yes, and his birthday was the 21st of September, 1866. And he illustrates another of your talents. You not only have a unique factual mentality, but also the ability to discriminate between what is relevant and important and what is not. The criticism consistently made against Virgo, that you can't see the wood for the trees, is simply not true. Of all the signs of the zodiac, you possess the ability to see the wood and the trees. In fact, you could probably tell the rest of us just how many oaks, firs, and elms are in the wood, as well as the easiest way from one side of it to the other.
You also mentioned our skill with words. I certainly like to find the right word for whatever I'm trying to say. I suppose that's why I enjoy reading dictionaries. I can spend hours just looking up the meanings of different words.
And did you know that Dr. Johnson, who spent 8 years compiling his famous dictionary, was also a Virgoan? His birthday was the 18th of September, 1709.
So rule 3 has to be, never think that a Virgoan doesn't mean precisely what he says.
I know that Virgo is also called the sign of service, but this does seem to be a very vague term. It could mean almost anything. What's it really supposed to mean?
Well, it's a very concise way of saying a great deal about Virgoans. But, as you remarked, it is open to misinterpretation. There are not only 12 signs of the zodiac, there are also 12 houses in a horoscope. Each of these 12 houses not only denotes an area of human life, but also represents a stage in human evolution. Virgo follows Leo, the sign of kings, and it must have become clear very shortly after men reached the stage of accepting the rulership of one man that he would need servants to carry out his wishes and commands. This is the stage represented by Virgo.
Oh dear, that does make us sound rather like the little people of the world.
But it shouldn't, because in all but a few cases, it is not the king on his throne who actually governs, but his ministers and advisers. And the king is also the servant of his people. Virgoans frequently do achieve high office, and if they are drawn into politics, it is not for personal glory, but because they genuinely feel compelled to serve the people. Cardinal Richelieu, Louis Kossuth, the liberator of Hungary, Lafayette, Lyndon Johnson, Frank Cousins, and George Brown are all Virgoans. It is thought, too, that England's much-loved king, Richard the Lionheart, was born under Virgo.
And wasn't Elizabeth I a Virgo as well?
Yes, she was.
And of course she's known as the Virgin Queen.
I suspect she remained powerful by remaining single. She had lots of admirers, but just played them off, one against the other.
All the same, there seems to have been an aloofness about her. Virgoans are, in fact, the most private people. Your private lives are exactly that. And it is very rare that a Virgoan will let his personal affairs spill over into any other side of his life. Virgo women in particular have a remote quality which quenches gossip and rumour. Greta Garbo is a striking example of this, for she remains a mystery to this day. Ingrid Bergman and Sophia Loren are two more great stars who have this particular aura of inviolability. But nearly all of you are self-contained people. You tend not to talk about yourselves, and your self-possession discourages other people from talking about you.
This gives us rule 4, and it's never say anything about a Virgoan unless you can prove it.
I'm still not too clear why Virgo is called the sign of service.
That's probably because there are 2 reasons, and I've only given one so far. For we must not only consider the symbolic meaning of your sign as the 6th stage in human evolution, but also look at it together with Pisces, your opposition sign. The sign opposing yours not only tells us the areas in which you are likely to be deficient, but also illustrates your own best and worst points. And it does seem that in astrology, each pair of opposition signs consists of two halves of a whole.
Oh, but surely we can't have much in common with Pisces. They're vague where we are precise, and impractical where we are practical. They work on their intuition, and we are guided by reason. Mind you, they are sometimes right.
But you can be more unrealistic, more dissatisfied with life, and harder to please than the most self-absorbed Piscean. What you have in common on the plus side is the most marvellous sense of what people could achieve if they were prepared to forget themselves, and a willingness to help others out and to make personal sacrifices to do so.
That's all you can do, isn't it, when people are in trouble? To put one's own interest first is not only selfish, it's self-defeating.
Like Pisces, you also make little of your own virtues. It is your ability to make sacrifices for others without expecting rewards, which is another of the reasons why Virgo is called the sign of service.
To set the record straight, I suppose you'd better tell us what Pisceans have that we lack.
Well, obviously, intuition is one of the things which they possess and which you appear to lack. But I suspect that it is not so much a deficiency of intuition as a distrust of it. You pin all your faith on reason because you know it works, but you don't really give your intuition a chance. And another thing which they possess in abundance and you lack is uncertainty.
Uncertainty? But that's a very negative attribute, if it's an attribute at all.
You are utterly convinced of the power of logic and the force of facts, while Pisceans know that logic can be false and facts deceptive. There are more things in heaven and earth than are dreamt of in your philosophy, and you will miss many of these things if you disregard everything that cannot be proved.
There are exceptions to every rule, and I'd love to hear about a Virgoan who breaks all the rules.
Well, I'll tell you about one. King Ludwig of Bavaria was the least Virgoan and the most Piscean Virgoan imaginable. Now, Virgoans are usually extremely sensible about money, and Pisceans are not. But Ludwig taxed the state and squeezed money out of his subjects to gratify his own artistic tastes and the whims of his favourites, including the composer Wagner. Virgoans are not usually eccentric, but Ludwig was so eccentric that many people spoke of him as the Mad King. He certainly lived in a never-never land where everything was beautiful and the money never ran out. Eventually, his ministers rebelled against his excesses and forced him to abdicate. All the same, we have him to thank for some of the most beautiful buildings in Bavaria, and for sponsoring much of Wagner's music.
Well, it's nice to know that we can be wild at times. Rule 5 had better be, don't always expect a Virgoan to be sensible.
Will you tell us, once and for all, are Virgoans supposed to be virginal?
Obviously, not all Virgoans are virginal. But I do understand what you meant when you said it was sometimes embarrassing to say you were born under the sign of the Virgin. Yours is not thought of as a sign of extremes, but in one respect you are just that. The fact that yours is a mental sign perhaps accounts for the fact that you have to think and ponder about things which others just accept as a matter of course. For where morals and sex are concerned, you are every bit as extreme as Scorpio, the sign which is said to govern the sex principle. Virgoans are not the sort of people who can take it or leave it. You tend either to take it in excess or to leave it well alone. Under your sign, we find such widely differing characters as Savonarola, the Italian monk, who tried to persuade the people of Renaissance Florence to abandon the pleasures of the world in favour of simplicity and purity, and Goethe, the great German writer, who was having affairs when he was well into his 90s. Caesar Borgia, the illegitimate son of Pope Alexander VI, was born on the 5th of September, 1478. He became a cardinal at the age of 17 and succeeded his brother as Captain General of the Church. This didn't prevent him from making a political marriage with the sister of the King of Navarre soon afterwards. He has gone down in history as a villain, guilty of innumerable vices and crimes, and as an utterly wanton human being.
But he's not exactly a typical Virgoan, is he?
No, but he does demonstrate that you can, and sometimes do, go to extremes. You are, as I have said, normally very sensible and rational people. But when you kick over the traces, you do so with a thoroughness that is breathtaking in its totality.
The people you've mentioned may be rather disreputable, but it is reassuring to know that we're not as ordinary and mediocre as people make out.
I think this reputation for mediocrity has grown up as a result of your own defense tactics. As I said, you are on the whole extremely private people, who prefer to keep themselves to themselves. Generally speaking, you do not allow people to know very much about you, and consequently you sometimes appear to be colourless. But what we should never forget is that you are an earth sign, and therefore earthy, and a mutable sign, and therefore rarely run true to form.
So rule 6 has to be, never think that you know a Virgoan. We can always surprise you.
Now, 1971. The planetary picture is not a harmonious one. So every sign of the zodiac will be facing personal problems depending on the placing and movements of the planets within the houses of the horoscope. Now, just as there are 12 signs of the zodiac, there are 12 houses in a horoscope, each one not only indicating a stage in human development, but also a more personal area of your life. To begin with, your own sign of Virgo corresponds to your first house, which is your ego and how you use your personality to cope with the world. The second house is Libra, which denotes your income and how you earn your money. Scorpio is your third and indicates communication in all senses of the word, both how you get on with those close to you and everyday journeys. The fourth is Sagittarius and symbolizes your home. Capricorn is your fifth and indicates romance, creative work and children. The sixth is Aquarius, and that represents both your health and your job. As you know, Pisces is your opposition sign and your seventh house, which indicates not only marriage and partnerships, but also open enemies. Aries, the eighth, is another money house, and this time inherited money, partnership money, and anything that concerns other people's money. Strangely, it also indicates sexual urges or drives. The ninth house is Taurus, and this represents more profound thought and achievements, and indicates foreigners or long-distance travel in your life. The 10th is Gemini, and symbolizes your position or standing in the world, and fame or notoriety. Cancer is your 11th house, and is your house of friends. Your 12th house is Leo, and represents all that is hidden, or that you don't want to show to the world. It is also the house of restrictions. So, the placing of the planets at any given time informs the astrologer just what areas of your life are going to be the most important. Important in that they indicate possible success, or conversely, important because they reveal the nature of possible problems.
Well, which areas of our life are going to be difficult and which ones are going to be good in 1971?
There are two areas of your life which could be good, in spite of conflicts. These are firstly your home, and secondly your prestige. This is because two planets, Jupiter and Neptune, will be in the sign of Sagittarius throughout most of 1971, and it is their influence which will affect your home life. Jupiter, the great benefactor, could improve the conditions in your home and make it altogether a more agreeable place, while Neptune should make you less critical of others. Saturn moves from Taurus into Gemini on the 19th of June.
Gemini is our position in the world and fame or notoriety, isn't it?
Yes, and particularly where your career is concerned. In a way, Saturn repays past efforts, and as far as you are concerned, could bring fulfillment for many years of consistent hard work. But because in Gemini it opposes Jupiter and Neptune, it is fair to assume that the recognition you receive will necessitate making readjustments in your home life. Virgoans are not basically assertive people, but you should do your utmost to capitalize on anything which could improve your career or status. One of the fundamental purposes of astrology is to give an indication of how to time your actions. And the message is, after the middle of 1971, be more ambitious in your aims and more confident of your abilities.
But if this is going to create problems for me at home, I won't be able to be more single-minded about my career.
Surely no amount of success is worth the sacrifice of one's personal life.
It's not a question of sacrifice. It is a question of understanding. One of your failings is that in an effort to spare those you care about worry or unhappiness, you will delay facing problems or breaking bad news until the last possible moment.
But this is surely the best way to avoid trouble for everyone.
But you prevent anyone else from taking precautions or coping with issues, which, given due warning, they could perhaps solve themselves. If, in the first half of 1971, you inform those close to you of your plans and elicit their cooperation or support, you will avoid recriminations. And now we'll look at the planet Uranus in Libra.
That's our income and what we earn.
Yes, and Uranus has been in Libra for the past couple of years.
Oh, is that why I find it totally impossible to keep to a budget? No matter how hard I try, something always throws it out.
It is very difficult to predict anything as far as Uranus is concerned. But at best, it can bring income from entirely unexpected sources. And you will always find that anything that is new and experimental proves to be the most financially successful for you.
Well, from what you've said, it sounds as though 1971 could be a good year for Virgoans, provided we're prepared to be a bit bolder and more adventurous. That will be harder than it sounds, because we don't have a great deal of self-confidence.
And you're also apt to spend too long in self-examination. Because Virgo is ruled by Mercury, it is one of the most mentally aware signs. You know that you're competent, but you're not sufficiently competitive, and you will only stretch your talents by pitting them against other people's. There are certain times during the year when, from our position on Earth, it seems that Mercury stops and then, for about 3 weeks, retraces its path through the heavens. This apparent backwards motion of your ruling planet is known in astrology as a retrograde Mercury, and the belief is that you and Gemini, two signs which are Mercury-ruled, are particularly affected in an adverse way.
What sort of effect does a retrograde Mercury have on us and our lives?
It affects mainly your mental attitudes. You experience confusion, uncertainty, and even more self-doubt than usual. The times in 1971 when you will have to fight this are from the 10th of April to the 4th of May, between the 13th of August and the 5th of September, and again from the 3rd to the 23rd of December. There are two precautions that you can take to minimize your difficulties during these periods. On a practical level, you should avoid or postpone important decisions, and on a more personal level, Accept the situation and don't let yourself become too despondent or self-critical. Finally, there are 2 eclipses of the moon during 1971, which astrologers view with a certain amount of apprehension. The first is on the 10th of February in the sign of Leo, and the second on the 6th of August in Aquarius.
Aquarius is our house of work and health, and isn't Leo that peculiar 12th house?
Yes, any eclipses are pointers to future events, and though one usually has to wait some time for the event to take place, some idea of the changes can be gleaned from the houses in which the eclipses occur. True enough, many Virgoans will be changing or altering their jobs, but this does, in fact, only emphasize the effect of Saturn in your 10th house and the changes in your professional standing and prestige, which we have already discussed. Now, health and secrets. The 2 seem to be inseparable, and it could be that throughout 1971 you will run the risk of endangering your health if you allow personal difficulties and frustrations to overshadow your life. Physically, the Virgoan is not a very robust person, and although your nervous energy allows you a certain stamina beyond your natural physical capabilities, it can and does create health problems in the process. At the time of these eclipses, it is important that you don't make the mistake of believing that the way to overcome personal or emotional disappointments is to suffer in silence. Suppression always creates inattentions, and inattentions, in turn, create physical problems.
You've told us about times of the year when life is likely to be more complex. Are our relationships with certain signs also supposed to be more difficult?
Yes, I've always heard that we're supposed to get on best with Taurus and Capricorn, but I'm not sure that we do.
Well, what do you think of them?
Well, I think Taurians are a lot tougher than they pretend.
That's funny. I was going to say that Capricorns are less tough than they pretend.
Well, what about the rest of the zodiac? Let's start with Aries.
They've got marvellous drive, but I wouldn't like to get in their way.
And Geminians?
They're very intelligent, but I suspect they're not very deep.
Cancer.
Very deep.
Leo?
You have to admire them.
And Libra?
Well, nothing ever seems to put them out.
Scorpio?
And the least little thing puts them out.
Sagittarius?
I don't think they're as confident as they seem.
Aquarius?
They're so unassailable.
And lastly, Pisces?
They're so helpless. You feel you want to protect them.
And what about other Virgoans?
Well, I've never met another Virgoan who did himself justice.
And I've never met one who couldn't laugh at himself.
Not bad for the sign of a critic. So, Virgo. Methodical, practical, and unassuming. The sign of the craftsman and the critic. Your contribution to humanity is seldom appreciated and rarely acknowledged. But craftsmanship is the outcome of years of devotion and consistency, and the critic must also be an authority. You have the ability to point out our weaknesses and the courage to do so. Although you may have faults, your high standards in love and friendship, as well as work, ensure that your lives are worthwhile, which is more important to you than success.